Well, good morning and good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are in the world, and good evening to some of you. Welcome to another Retail Wire webinar. We have a great event for you today. I think you're going to love it. The title is Becoming Digital the Amazon Way, and it's sponsored by Software AG. So let's get right to it. That's a little bit about my background. We won't dwell on that, but I am one of the co-founders of Retail Wire and the CEO. In terms of Retail Wire, again, we won't dwell on it, but we are the largest expert discussion site in the retailing industry with 85,000 active users per month, 32,000 email subscribers, and it says 50,000 social media followers. We're now up to 60,000, and then we have a unique brain trust of industry experts. We discuss 3 new topics a day, so you're welcome to join us and weigh in on your thoughts on the important trends in the retailing industry. In terms of our agenda today, we're going to open with a presentation on Becoming Digital the Amazon Way from John Rossman, who is author and managing partner at Rossman Partners and has a lot of experience working at Amazon. Then we're going to have a panel discussion with John and Oliver Guy from Software AG. I'll be moderating that discussion, and then we'll have Q&A from the audience. So the key thing here is as we go along, if you could please get your questions in as early as you can, especially for John's presentation, and then the panel discussion, you'll have the best chance of getting them answered. So without any further ado, what we'd like to do is just sort of take the pulse of the audience. So we'd like to ask you, how likely are you to start an Internet of Things initiative in the next 6 months? Are you not likely? In other words, you're in the watch and wait mode. Are you somewhat likely? You have small initiatives underway. Are you most likely with defined projects? Or are you definitely all in and your strategy is underway? So if you could get those votes in as quickly as you could, and we'll see how things are shaking out right now. It looks like we're more or less tied between not likely and small initiatives. It's moving a little bit, so I'm going to let it go a few more seconds. But it definitely appears that the large majority of you are either not likely to get into it in the next 6 months, or just small initiatives that most of you don't have big projects underway. So with that in mind, we'll move to our next slide, and I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, and that is John Rossman, author and managing partner at Rossman Partners. He's the author of the Amazon Way book series, which, by the way, is available on Amazon and is a great read. He's managing partner at Rossman Partners, a digital strategy and operations improvement consulting firm. He's an expert at crafting and implementing innovative and digital business models and capabilities, including the Internet of Things. He's a sought-after speaker on creating a culture of operational excellence and innovation. And prior to Rossman Partners, he was an executive at Amazon, where he launched the marketplace business and ran the enterprise services business. His blog is www.the-amazon-way.com. So John is eminently qualified to give us some insights into the Amazon Way. So John, welcome, and you should be on your first slide.
Perfect. Thanks, Al. And nice to get to talk to everybody out there. I get to talk to a lot of audiences and teams and leaders, and it's typically framed around we need to become digital. And I always start with kind of a simple question, which is, what does it mean to become digital? And I think everyone oftentimes thinks of the mobile experiences or maybe of cloud capability, on-demand infrastructure. And what I would propose to you is that being digital is really about 2 core attributes. And these core attributes are both how your customers see you as well as how you work internally. So the first attribute is speed. And if you think about speed, speed is really about being very efficient at repetitive motions. It's really the operational excellence capability within an organization. The other key attribute, and while it sounds similar, it's actually distinctly different, which is agility. And agility is the capability of being able to make either small or large changes in your business. And again, these are capabilities that both define you to your customers as well as define how you work internally. I don't think it's any big leap to say Amazon demonstrates both of these capabilities, both speed, operational excellence, and agility. And the real question is, how does Amazon go about doing that in a systematic way? It's not an accidental approach on how Amazon gets the results of both operational excellence and agility and innovation. There's a system in effect. So today I wanted to quickly walk through just a few of the tricks and mindsets and strategies and approaches that Amazon uses for themselves to get these types of results. And I think the real question then is, what do you need to do internally in your organization to achieve these types of results? So let's dive into them. So Amazon's first leadership principle is customer obsession. Leaders start with the customer and work backwards. They work vigorously to earn and keep customer trust. And while they pay attention to competitors, they obsess about customers. And the most important word in that leadership principle is the word obsession. When you're dealing with somebody that's obsessed about something, it's the number 1, 2, and 3 priority. They're oftentimes really difficult to understand if you don't share that obsession. The empty chair pictured on the slide was often brought into a meeting at Amazon to remind us that the customer isn't present and that it's everybody's job to understand the customer, hopefully using deep insights and data to do that. I know one of the trends out there in a lot of organizations is to have a chief customer officer or a customer experience officer. And while I think that that can be a good step, I don't think it defines what the end goal is here. The end goal is understanding the customer, putting the customer's perspective first and having that impact our work. That's everybody's job. It's not one person or one organization. So think about, as you go about in your meetings and your work, how do you make it everybody's job and give permission to everybody to understand the customer? One of the things that's interesting that's going on at Amazon right now is they are using the Internet of Things to continue to improve the customer experience. And I've got 4 quick examples that I wanted to walk through because I think there's some different lessons to learn from each one of them. The first in the upper left is the Amazon Dash Wand. This was a capability really meant for the pantry, let a customer either speak, take a photo, scan a UPC code to get product information. It never went out of beta. What would most companies do when something is a quote-unquote failure, it doesn't go to large-scale production? They would shut down the initiative. But the Dash quickly morphed into the Dash buttons, right? Most of us probably have a Dash button. Hundreds of brands are sponsoring Dash buttons. The Dash button is a great brand representation at the moment of need for a customer. What's really interesting is that the next generation of Dash buttons are actually embedded into products. So that, for example, the Brita water filter will reorder itself based on actual usage and actual cleanliness. The Brita spokesperson has a great quote, which is, "The moment of running out is a really bad customer moment." And I think that all of us have the opportunity to understand our customer a little deeper, to understand what our customer's really bad moments are, and ask ourselves the question, how could we improve the customer experience in their really bad customer moments? Maybe it's using IoT, maybe it's not. But if you continually ask yourself, how can I serve my customer broader, and how can I do it not on the happiest moments, but on the really bad moments, you'll build different insights. The next example is the Amazon Echo. Probably lots of us have the Echo. The power isn't the form function. The power is the Alexa voice software. Amazon thought about this as a platform from day one. And we'll talk a little bit more about platforms, but they realized they need other people. They need an ecosystem to invest to make this a powerful customer tool, and they're not worried about how to monetize it day one. But the next example I think is the most powerful. This is a beta experience in Germany. It's a partnership between Amazon, DHL, and Audi, and it allows a customer to order a product and have it delivered to their car without specifying where the car is. The DHL delivery person gets the car location. They get a one-time electronic fob. They open the trunk, put in the package, fob's disabled, customer gets a message, right? Powerful customer experience. Two important lessons there. First is that the future of customer experiences will oftentimes span enterprises and go across multiple brands and multiple enterprises. And so the ability to do operational partnerships, things that have real-time data and transactions that are secure, that are reliable, is going to be a really important capability for most companies. And the second important lesson is that while I'm sure they did a business case for this, it probably wouldn't stack rank if you purely ranked it on ROI against lots of other opportunities they have. There are those experiments or bets that you know you need to do, but you likely can't get the business case to step up. And you need to think carefully about, how do I create some aspect of a portfolio that does those really smart things that are difficult to guess on the business case? But underneath all of these examples is this key learning that I take away from this, which is Amazon, the most trusted brand in America, famous for great customer experiences. They aren't resting on their laurels. They continue to reinvent the customer experience in big ways and small ways. And my guess is that if Amazon can do it, most of us can find opportunities to improve the customer experience also. So the next slide, Innovate Through Contact Avoidance. This is a really good book. It's written by the first Vice President of Customer Service, Bill Price at Amazon. Bill's a friend of mine. The entire secret of this book in Amazon's customer service strategy, which is Amazon had the early insight that most customer questions and most customer contacts are actually a deficiency or an error. And what they did was they empowered their customer service organization, the organization that was closest to the customer, hearing the customer, understanding their issues. They not only equipped them to get better at handling customer contacts, but they equipped them to actually address the root cause of the customer contact. And they made them a very empowerful organization to drive down to the root cause. But what happens in most customer contact centers and most customer service organizations, they're empowered to improve how they handle customer contacts, but they're not actually empowered on improving and driving out the root cause that drives customer questions and customer issues. So think about, how do you empower the customer service organizations to actually remove the friction and remove the need for customer question or customer error? Instrumentation is a really big topic at Amazon. I could talk about this. I have, in fact, talked about this for an entire hour. The entire operational rhythm at Amazon is based around metrics and instrumentation. We viewed talking about and agreeing on the metrics that we were going to use to measure a business, measure a new service, measure a customer experience. We would spend more time talking and agreeing on what the metrics were as we would talking about what the experience or what the design was going to be, because we knew no matter what we went live with, if we had great metrics, we would be able to improve that experience quickly, and we would also be able to let that team run a little faster with a little less governance because they were focused on measuring the right results. We use the word instrumentation at Amazon very specifically. Most of us talk about metrics or business intelligence, but we use the word instrumentation. And there's two real reasons why we use the word instrumentation. First was instrumentation was about getting the most granular data we could. And even if we didn't know how we were going to use it, we would keep it because we knew at some point that could be very valuable data. And the second thing that instrumentation is about, it's about real-time capabilities, real-time measurements, real-time processes, because you're able to do different things with real-time data than you can with latent or batched data. So think about, how do we create architectures in our processes, in our systems, in our customer experiences that measure customer experiences, that use real-time granular data to understand what's truly going on out there, and how do we use that data to actually address the root cause to drive operational effectiveness and improvement in our business. And if you do that on a consistent basis, you'll also come up with great ideas for continued innovation. So the two-pizza team is a fairly widely known concept from Amazon, so you can Google and read more about a two-pizza team. I think the real insight here is that Jeff Bezos' number one concern for Amazon, long-term concern for Amazon, isn't a competitive concern. It isn't a government interference concern. Jeff's biggest concern for Amazon is about bureaucracy. And he's a big believer in small teams, that small teams will always out-deliver. Small teams will always have better ownership and be more accountable. And small teams will always have more fun than big bureaucratic organizations. So a lot of what Amazon does, a lot of what these leadership principles are about, is about how to avoid bureaucracy. So Amazon does a lot to try to organize into small teams. One type of small team is called a two-pizza team. A two-pizza team owns a core capability, and it's typically a cross-functional team, no bigger than 10, and they own a core capability within Amazon. And they own it over a longer period of time so that you have more of that product ownership mentality than a project mentality. So think about, how do you organize around your core capabilities? These could be capabilities that are exposed to customers, so the image service or the payment service, or it could be core internal capabilities like the inventory receive process or the item forecasting process. But if you have small teams that own those capabilities over a longer period of time, they will operate better and they will innovate better. Most organizations confuse this notion of process and bureaucracy. Most organizations allow their processes to actually hide and expose bureaucracy. At Amazon, the notion of good process is very different. That good process actually hides, and actually good process avoids bureaucracy. So what does it mean at Amazon to have good process? Here's a quick list. So first is, a process has an owner, right? That doesn't mean that that owner runs that process across every organization in Amazon. It means that that person defines the process that is used across other teams. So the inventory receive process owner at Amazon defines a process and tooling and technical capabilities that is then used in every fulfillment center for their inventory receive process. So a process has an owner. A process has a deep understanding of who their customers are, and they're always measuring adoption for those customers. A good process, of course, always has instrumentation and a metrics deck, and they're always able to answer the question, did my customers, internal or external, have a good day today, yes or no, and why did they have a good day or a bad day today? And a good process always has a roadmap. And this is really a low-stress roadmap. It's really a way of collecting the thoughts and the ideas of how could we improve our capability, how would we reduce errors, how would we improve the cost, how would we improve the customer experience, how would we gain broader adoption for our capability. And if you create that habit of collecting the ideas, then when the moments come that, hey, we need to rationalize our investment, or we've got an opportunity to improve this, we need to explain ourselves, then you have those habits and you have all those ideas collected, so you're much more prepared to then rationalize and explain what those ideas. So think about closely, like, what are your core processes, and how do you raise the bar on what a process means within your organization? If you do those things well, organize around core capabilities, empower teams, then one of the questions you're going to be better prepared for is this notion of a platform capability. So a platform capability is a core capability that you expose to external parties to both use and to innovate on top of. One of the real secrets of Amazon's platform businesses are that platforms need to be self-service. I shouldn't have to come talk to you in order to use your capability. Amazon has many platform businesses. I got to launch and run one of Amazon's platform businesses, the marketplace business. Obviously, Amazon Web Services, the cloud computing is a big one. It's really interesting where the cloud computing business came from. It didn't come from a known strategy of how to disrupt the traditional infrastructure and software business. It came from asking ourselves, how would we make an infrastructure service that's good enough for our internal teams at Amazon? And then we asked ourselves, the only way we're going to get really critical feedback on that is if we have external customers. And so we said we're going to force the platform team to turn it inside out and have external developers as customers of that platform. And then what we found was that external developers loved the on-demand, pay-by-the-SIP model of Amazon Web Services, and then the business took off. So most businesses don't really have an opportunity to be a platform company, but every company has the opportunity to ask themselves really two questions. First, what are my core capabilities? What are the processes and capabilities that I should be world-class at? And then the next question you ask is around those core capabilities. How would I make that capability good enough to have external customers where it's cost competitive, where it has high quality, where I would have a set of metrics and SLAs that I could have external clients leverage this capability in a self-service manner? And if you ask yourself that question, guess what you'll find? You'll find a lot of opportunities for improvement in innovation around those core capabilities. And you'll start thinking of and building your business as a modular type business. And when you have modular capabilities, you're much easier able to progress and make migrations and transitions in those capabilities. Leadership principle number 7 at Amazon is think big. Thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Leaders create and communicate a bold vision that inspires results. It's hard not to love that leadership principle, right? Who wouldn't want to think big? But the important notion here is to not confuse thinking big with betting big. Innovators are always able to find ways to make small, incremental, agile approaches to be able to test things out. If you know the answer to an investment, if it's going to work, then it's truly not a bet. We have to find those things that we don't truly know whether they're going to work. We have to build our hypotheses, and then we have to figure out how do we make that test as small and agile as possible so that we can truly learn from it. Amazon continues to really talk about doubling down on the number of bets that they're making, that Amazon is the best place in the world to fail at. And what most of us don't understand is that if you truly want to innovate, if you truly want to make bets, you have to deal with a high amount of ambiguity and failure through those. But the key is, while having a big vision, think about how do you make them small and agile and affordable, and you have to put a different governance structure around those than you do your traditional types of projects and investments. Leadership principle number 14 is deliver results. So, leadership principle number 1 is obsess about the customer. Number 14 is deliver results. I think those are there on purpose. Number 2 through 13 could be in any order. Leaders at Amazon truly are expected to deliver hard results despite setbacks and despite dependency. So you see some kind of odd behavior at good leaders at Amazon. One of the behaviors that you see at Amazon is that leaders, if I am using your service, if I am dependent upon you for my success, internally or externally, I'm always trying to create a set of metrics and service level agreements, SLAs, that define how your service is going to operate for me. And when you create a culture that allows itself to hold each other accountable through metrics and through SLAs, guess what? Everybody can then count on using each other's capabilities much better. You'll get much higher reuse, and you'll deliver much better. So think about, we're all dependent upon others for our success. But how do you work towards a set of metrics and service level agreements so that we can hold each other better accountable while still having a collegial and productive environment? So the next slide is really the secret sauce of how Amazon goes about thinking through and rationalizing and prioritizing the types of ideas and investments and projects. And it's so unique that it's very powerful. The first thing I'd say is that this is not a productivity enhancer. These things will slow down the process. But if you make better decisions upfront about the things you're going to invest in, you're going to be much more successful at delivering against those. So the first idea is we didn't use PowerPoint to propose or explain our proposals or ideas. We always used a 6-page narrative. So a 6-page narrative forces a team to write out their idea, their proposal very carefully, and it forces the group that's going to review and approve that to read it more carefully and understand it. So think about ditching the PowerPoint and writing out all your ideas as narratives. The second idea is write all your ideas as a future press release. And so a future press release is, less than a page, and it's not for the point of launch. It's about for a period of time, say a year after launch. And you always talk about in the future press release, what delighted my customer about the core capability or about the service or about the new experience. You would include kind of your metrics and business case. How am I going to measure the impact and success of this? And then the third part of the future press release is talking about the hard issues that you had to overcome in order to achieve success. Think about giving one person in the organization, empowering them to drive that future press release to success, and make it the clear expectation that relative to achieving the success articulated in that future press release, we all work for that person. We're all answerable to that person, regardless of role and title and seniority. We're all answerable to that person. Again, it's a way of avoiding the organization structure and avoiding bureaucracy to get hard things done. The next idea is always start from day one writing out FAQs, and write these FAQs from different points of view, from the user experience, from operations, from legal, from finance, from sustainment engineering, you name it. Write the FAQs from different points of view. And if you do that from the very start, guess what? You're building better empathy and better insights for the organizations that need to use your core capability as you're thinking about launching it. And the last thing we would do before we wrote any code, any new service, any new capability, is we would try to write a user manual, again, as a way of trying to develop customer insights and thinking for the customer and working backwards from that. But I think, again, all of this with all the, need for change, you got to ask yourself the question, why is it so hard for big companies, especially successful companies, to make these types of changes and to transition into the digital world? And I think, Jeff's quote here really nails it, which is the death knell for any enterprise is to glorify the past, no matter how good it is. And I saw an interview with Jeff, and the presenter asked him, Jeff, are you worried about Amazon being disrupted, as the most feared and watched company that's creating this type of disruption? And Jeff leaned back and he laughed and he said, it's not a question of if, it's a matter of when, and I'm just trying to make it so it's not in my lifetime. And I think that if boards and CEOs and leadership teams really took that perspective of it's not a question of if, it's a matter of when, and act as if you're already under siege, you're going to approach how you innovate differently, and you're going to get a different set of results. So I want to say thank you for the opportunity. We're going to have a great opportunity for Q&A, but hopefully that gives you a few tools and ideas that you can use to really build, digital capabilities within your organization.
All right, John. Well, thank you very much. A lot to chew on there, so really appreciate your great presentation. I want to just move on here. So I do want to remind everybody as we look at the panelists for our panel discussion, if you do have a question, now would be a great time to get it in the queue. We have a number coming in, and we'll only be able to get to so many with our limited amount of time, so this would be your best chance to get your question in for John. Now I'd like to introduce Oliver Guy, who is the Global Industry Director at Software AG. He specializes in retail digital transformation and omnichannel technology strategy, advising retailers across the globe on their technology strategy and decisions. He has more than 20 years focused in technology and has worked with major names in global retail, helping them improve their business through the use of innovative technology. Prior to joining Software AG, Oliver was part of the European management team at Oracle Retail, being responsible for retail-focused solution consulting across Europe. So welcome, Oliver. And with that, I'd like to ask the audience one more poll question, and I also want to just let you know that if you stick around till the end, which will be just before the top of the hour, and take a quick 1-minute survey, you're going to get an instant download of a new report, Reimagining Retail in the Age of Amazon. So hopefully you'll hang around to get that download. So here's our next poll question for the audience. Regarding John's instrumentation point in his just completed presentation, how equipped are you to monitor business metrics in real time? So check the appropriate button if you're unequipped and cannot monitor business metrics in real time. The second one, if you're somewhat equipped, isolated pockets. Third, if you're equipped with a broad range of metrics. And fourth, if you consider yourself an expert in real-time monitoring. So let's see how those votes are coming in and see how many experts we've got. So it looks like over half of you are somewhat equipped with isolated pockets of real-time metrics. The next one looks to be about 25% of you are unequipped, and we only have about 4% experts. So that's kind of where we are at this moment. So with that, we're going to get into our 4 pre-formatted discussion questions, kind of our lightning round. And the first question is on agility. So we know that many companies are saddled with a vast expanse of legacy processes and systems, cause a lot of problems. So in light of those constraints, what can the older companies with legacy systems do to become more agile? So John, if you don't mind, I'll start with you and then go to Oliver on that one.
Yeah, well, one thing they can do is they can start thinking through their service-oriented architectures and isolating core capabilities, your customers, your items, your inventory. And when you think about building service-oriented architectures, then that allows you to start building that agility so that you can launch new capabilities and new products and new processes faster over time. But it is some investment to do it.
And Oliver, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with what John was saying. I mean, the things I would add to that, I mean, obviously we wouldn't want to omit the cultural elements of that. But I mean, what are the concepts that I find myself in discussions with around with customers is around, we want to have this 21st century architecture which allows us to do things very, very quickly and make changes, and rather than put in an application or put in a system for the next several years, put something in, effectively, whilst it's been very customer focused, very much focused on it only been in existence for a short amount of time.
And either of you have any final points you want to make before we move on to our next question?
Well, the only other thing I'd say is, Eric Rees in his Lean Startup does a really good job of talking about how to create hypotheses and how to test. And too many companies think they're being agile, but they actually aren't learning. They aren't creating their hypotheses and their tests before they go into them. So it's hard for them to learn because of that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that in the area of agility that one comment I'd like to make, Al, is it's quite interesting. There's a lot of commentary about it's very good to be a fast follower of many of the ideas that Amazon have. But my perspective on that is, if you're going to be a fast follower, you've got to do all the basics, the things that John mentioned, the 21st century architecture, the cultural necessity, etc. But also, anything that you do has got to be as good as, if not better than, what Amazon do. So, for example, if Amazon are offering, same hour delivery, it's no good you offering, delivery within 2 hours. You've got it, otherwise it's non-competitive. It's not a me too. It's not even a me too.
Yeah, so you either have to compete or compete. Okay, so we're going to move kind of quickly through these. So here's our second question for the panel on the Internet of Things, which McKinsey predicts will have a $400 billion annual impact by 2025, and yet adoption in retailing appears slow compared to other industries, which we saw, I believe, in the poll result on the first poll. So what do you attribute the foot dragging to? Oliver, would you like to take this one first?
Yeah, no, I mean, as I say, the poll did not surprise me in the slightest. I think that, one of the things about IoT, there's a number of things going on here. The first thing is that, I think companies need to get their handle on business outcomes. And I think, there is a responsibility from a vendor perspective to actually talk around business outcomes rather than, hey, what you're doing around IoT. Talk about, we can help you reduce your inventory or increase sales or what have you. And then IoT just happens to be the technology enabler that allows you to do that. I think that's a barrier. The other thing is, I do believe some companies are doing things already which they may not consider as IoT. Certainly see a couple of examples like that. But the other, of course, the final thing is this, and I call it the bridge analogy. That the whole thing around, what's the value? The value of a bridge is in taking the journey across the bridge. But no individual wants to pay for the bridge. They just want to have the journey. And there is the whole thing around infrastructure and for an IoT project, you need potentially an awful lot of infrastructure. So it's about finding the right technology that allows you to actually innovate and do small projects. Again, back to the agile thing. Fail fast and then move on, and actually then have the ability to scale if something takes off.
And John?
Yeah, when I see this, I always think of Bill Gates' quote, which is, we always overestimate the impact that technology will have in 2 years and underestimate the impact it will have in 10 years. And I think IoT fits that perspective exactly. I think there is clearly some hype going on, but where I think for most companies to get started on is start on something that impacts operational effectiveness versus a customer experience. And so that you can better have a real business case and a real use case around it. I work with one company specifically that's focused on worker safety using IoT and a sensor-based belt. Things like that tend to be more real and where you can measure, have a real ROI to it, and where it's internally easier to control and figure out the adoption curve for it versus a customer perspective. I think that's the right place for most companies to start. And I think that a lot of people are just kind of a fast follower at this point, which I think in a lot of cases makes a lot of sense, especially relative to the customer experience.
Okay, we've got a number of questions in the queue, so I'm going to move on if you guys don't mind. So the third question here is on instrumentation. The facility to be able to get real-time analytics seems like it could have a major impact on retailer performance. Outside of Amazon, how prevalent is its use? And at this point, is it delivering what companies want and need? So John, I'm going to come to you first.
Well, I think, the first thing is having great metrics and instrumentation real-time data is one thing, but then actually putting it to use, using it to drive operational excellence is the thing that is Amazon's tempo. I don't know if you know this, but if you go to relentless.com, that actually goes to Amazon, right? And that is the nature of the operational rhythm at Amazon, which is we are relentless in shooting for a perfect customer experience and for operational excellence. And they do it in a very data-driven, accountable way. And so you have to think about not just having the data and the instrumentation, but then how do you actually put it to use to drive operational improvements?
And Oliver?
Yeah, I mean, instrumentation. I mean, when I read John's book, I absolutely loved the concept of instrumentation because for me, it's something that I feel so many companies have been missing for so long. As a consumer, as a customer, you expect a response, an immediate response right now, and that is where the whole same day and then within the hour delivery concept came from. It's this rapid response. And so much reporting in businesses is about what happened, yesterday or what happened last week, and I read the concept of instrumentation resonated, as I say, because allows you to take action from that. But again, what is getting in the way? Well, it boils back to, from my experience, the architecture but not just the fact that you've got this combination of kind of old and new, but also the fact that you're not able to bring together feeds from different systems together. Leveraging technologies to pull that together and actually draw conclusions and then take actions. And I think that technology exists, but I think companies have been far too engaged in terms of dealing with the changes in the industry, in terms of satisfying the consumer from a same-day delivery, for example, and buy online, pick up in store, etc.
Hey, Oliver, I'm going to pick up
Please do.
where you just left off, which is instrumentation isn't just about having metrics, but it's also about enabling new capabilities. It's because Amazon has real-time accurate inventory information, not just in their fulfillment center, but in all of their drop shippers and their entire supply chain, that they're able to continually ratchet up the ability to go from 2-day shipping to 1-day shipping, from 1-day shipping to 2-hour shipping, and from 2-hour shipping, it's only going to get faster, right? And so that real-time data throughout the supply chain is the core capability that enables tomorrow's innovation.
So what you're saying, John, is the higher the level of the precision, the precision almost drives the innovation.
That's right, or it's the limiting factor to the innovation if you don't have it.
Yeah.
Okay, and just in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. I hate to break up a good conversation, but so we'll do this last one, and then we've got a lot of questions in the queue, and I want to get to as many as we can, so we'll move pretty quickly here. So the last question is, starting with the customer, buy online, pick up in store is one example of how companies started with a customer challenge and worked it backwards to the solution. So what do you see as the largest barriers in companies have to solving customer problems? Oliver, you want to go first?
Yeah, okay. So this is a really interesting one. I mean, my perspective on this is that in order to differentiate, you can no longer differentiate yourselves from the competition based on price or assortment. You've got to fix a problem that the customer has. And the reality is, you can't do that simply, by buying a piece of software off the shelf. You've got to actually, build something yourself. You've got to actually connect the different systems together in order to facilitate that. And a great example. So I was having some discussions with a home improvement retailer. And what they will, they see their business model moving away from kind of selling parts to fix your central heating to providing central heating as a service to their customers. And the reality is there isn't software that exists to out of the box to do that. That is a bespoke development using by combining data and flows, across lots of different systems. It's a very, very complicated process involved, and they need to orchestrate across lots of different systems.
And John, you're going to get the last word on this, then we'll move to the audience questions.
Fantastic. I think there's a lot of large barriers, but one of them is oftentimes the organization, and it's the whole, we've identified the enemy and it is us. I've worked with a number of large retailers on omni-channel capabilities like this, and it's amazing how the internal organizational structure and the metrics and the MBOs, the managed by objectives, and the P&Ls get in the way of enabling new capabilities. I worked with a large retailer who wanted to pilot a order online pickup at curb capability, and it was only because the retail leadership they couldn't figure out a way how to work that relative to their internal P&Ls that the initiative just was killed. And it was the absolute right thing to do for the business. Amazon's second leadership principle is about ownership. And one of the aspects of ownership is that leaders always look to optimize the enterprise and not their sub-businesses or their individual metrics. And what you see is the exact opposite of that, where leaders are trying to optimize their own individual metrics versus thinking about the long-term value of the enterprise. And so, one of the largest barriers is how we organize and letting our organization get in the way of doing the right thing.
Okay, so we'll see how many of these audience questions we can get to, and I'll probably just rotate and ask you each one question in the interest of time because we have a bunch. So Patrick asks, John, what are your thoughts about the Amazon returns process, and do you think it's a good customer experience today? And I guess we can just say, so what do you extrapolate from that for other retailers?
What I find interesting is that, the returns process, that's kind of like one of those processes where why would I want to make it world class, and everything, right? If you're a financial person, you kind of want to slow that down. But Amazon, in lots of ways, big ways and small ways, continues to improve the returns experience. One thing that I recently noticed was that Amazon sets the expectation that I will receive my credit back when an item is received at the fulfillment center and is inspected. But because Amazon knows me so well and because they trust me, I actually got the credit back as soon as the item was scanned at a UPS store, right? Like, that's counterintuitive from a financial perspective, but it's absolutely the right thing from a customer experience standpoint. So, I think the key learning is they continue to invest in making a world-class return process, which in some optics is counterintuitive.
Okay, and Oliver, I'm going to give you the next question. So Sajid asks, how do you make a process avoid bureaucracy? So how do you get something done in a bureaucratic company, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, the process. Yeah, so I think when I think back to what John was talking about, for me, it's about ownership. It's about ownership of the processes, but it's also about avoiding over-engineering by not having too many people involved in the actual design of the process in the first place. And I think there is an opportunity for an awful lot of you start looking at things like customer journey mapping, and you start start looking at your processes and mapping your processes. That, for a start, will help you identify issues before you can start streamlining them, and look for issue avoidance that way.
Okay, next one from Jose. John, if you could take this one. He says, how to hire people with this kind of interest, I think interest in terms of doing some of the exciting things you were talking about. But tell us about the hiring process and how you hire the right people to do the job.
Well, that's a big question, but the simple thing I'll point out, just for the factor of time, is hiring problem solvers, right? That is a skill that you can interview, and problem solvers inherently don't like the status quo. And so you have to hire, and think about differently in how you set them up. Like your everyday operational people have a tough time also being the people that are going to dramatically change a capability. But so oftentimes we ask that to happen. And so I think that hiring problem solvers and giving them a degree of independence from the current state is one factor to think through.
Okay, and this one is from Theo, who says, earlier John talked about how Amazon, DHL, and Audi formed an ecosystem. But ecosystems like this are new for retailers. We've always managed complex supply chains, but not complex ecosystems like this. What will we need to do differently to make this happen? Maybe I'll come back to you, John, for a second, and then go to Oliver quickly.
Well, one thing is you have to have, real-time capabilities and expose them via APIs so that you can, enable a cross-cutting, highly operational, highly secure set of experiences that, that type of scenario requires.
And Oliver, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I think that, the real-time visibility, like John was talking about earlier on, I think is key. But the other thing I would like to add is retailers have been hardwired for the past 100 years of a very, very simple standard business model. So the amount of change that's going on in terms of the number of channels that they're dealing with and the complexity of customer journeys, this is another dimension. So there's the retailers are getting used to this constant change. So there's a lot of learning going on. But again, it boils down to this agility thing that we talked about earlier.
And the other thing I would just highlight there is I kind of mentioned, like, sometimes these things don't have a super clear business case, but it's the right thing to trial, and everything, right? And so that set of bets that you're going to make where, I can't quite get the business case to pencil out. If you only let finance drive those things that you're going to bet against, you're typically never going to innovate.
Okay, and I think we have time.
I see a lot of that.
I think we have time for 4 more if we go quickly, and then we'll have the download that the audience can grab. This one's a little more of a personal question, but I'm going to ask it to you, John. Rick is asking what advice you have for someone with a lot of experience looking to get hired by Amazon.
Understand their leadership principles, honestly, and be able to demonstrate them in the work that you've done. I mean, that is the simplest and true answer to that. Be a problem solver.
Okay, and Oliver, I'm going to come to you. The next one. Which are the main capabilities a company should start building in order to prepare itself for digital?
Okay, so for me, as I say, the single biggest barrier is around architecture. So equipping oneself with a 21st century architecture, looking at things like capability around being able to do things in real time, and augmenting that over and above what you have together, what you have in existence already, that is absolutely key. Combine that with the ability to orchestrate very, very complicated, orchestrate and automate very complex processes, which are required to create these digitally innovative things and automate things across these different systems. Those, for me, are the most important things.
Okay, and I'm going to ask this next one of both of you, but ask you to be quick. Sajid is asking, he says, Agile can be a faster way to proceed, but how about the accuracy of such decisions? John?
Well, I think I'll interpret that question in a little different way. Sometimes Agile is interpreted as the methodology of no accountability, no estimates, and everything, and sloppy execution. And you have to be really smart about, that's why you have to be so clear about what your hypotheses are up front. What am I testing? And you have to execute relentlessly against that. You can't allow Agile to become a sloppy execution excuse.
And Oliver?
Yeah, and I think there's a cultural element that needs to blend in there in terms of, the whole fail fast, the experiment, fail fast, and then move on and find something that does work. I think that there's that cultural element that needs to be blended in as well.
Okay, and the last question, I'm just going to throw it to John, and then we'll do our housekeeping and do the giveaway. So Sharon asks, what about Amazon's culture allows it to launch new businesses that it hasn't had experience with? I'm thinking of apparel. All of a sudden, Amazon reportedly has developed about 41 brands. So how do they do so much so fast in areas they don't have experience with?
Well, on a category like that, actually, Amazon, that was the first category that we launched on the marketplace platform in late 2002 was apparel, right? And so there's this mindset that we called launch and learn at Amazon, right, where we'd be entering a new capability, a new category. We would start at one point if you think about the entire value cycle of the business, we would start in one point, and then over time, we would look upstream and downstream, understand the customers, understand the economics, understand where there's a really bad customer experience and really traditional mindsets. And then over time, we would continue to expand in those. And that launch and learn mentality is on categories like apparel really what's allowed Amazon to be patient and to innovate and grow some really big businesses. And as they point out, Amazon's private label business they do have about 40 different brands, and it's the kind of silent killer in their retail business.
All right. Well, with that, I really want to thank John and Oliver. And you'll see contact information here for Software AG. There are a number of different ways to contact them, and they assure me that email address will be answered. You can also contact me if you have a question about us or this webinar or webinars in general. And then just to remind you, John Rossman's email is john@rossman, ROSSMAN, partners.com. So john@rossmanpartners.com. I'd like to thank John for giving a tremendous presentation and answering a lot of questions. Oliver, thank you very much for participating in the panel discussion and giving us some astute answers. And thank you to Software AG for sponsoring this webinar. So with that, we'd love for you to stick around for just one more minute, take the survey, and then if you do that, you're going to get an instant download called Reimagine Retail in the Age of Amazon. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next Retail Wire webinar. So long.